This is the audio version of In Training, the #1 model railroading newsletter with over 4,000 subscribers. Featuring Dave Pare, Doug Pascali, and Jimmy Degnan. Now here's your host, Scotty Mason.
Hi folks, and welcome to our May podcast. Alongside me as always are Jimmy Degnan and Doug Pascali, and with us this month, joining us for the first time and hopefully every time, is a newcomer to the hobby, and hopefully I won't mispronounce his name too badly. It's Dave Pare, I think is how it's pronounced. Welcome, Dave.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
And Dave raises the quality of this podcast up about 200%, and hopefully he can add a little wit and wisdom, which is something that up to this point we've been lacking quite a bit of. So, or at least from me. I won't disparage Doug and Jimmy too bad, but anyway, Dave, we look forward to your monthly contributions.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Now, before we get started this month, to kind of bring it down to a sad note, we want to pass on our condolences to Mike Tuilik, whose wife Jan passed away a couple of weeks ago after a long battle with a brain tumor. And, unfortunately, she succumbed to it. And I was fortunate enough to have met Jan on a number of occasions, and she was a very wonderful person. And last month on the podcast, we talked a little bit about Mike and the fact that he's doing clinics for us at the Structure Convention. And anybody who's ever met Mike knows what a wonderful guy he is. He's the type of guy that would do anything for you. I've known him for about 15 years, and the day I met him, I felt like I had known him for about 20 years. So our wishes and thoughts are with Mike and his son Jim, and we hope they're doing well, and we're definitely thinking about them here. So having said that, let's move on to our current events. And one of the things we wanted to talk about this month in conjunction with the Craftsman Structure Show are the contests. And Doug, why don't you talk a little bit about the contests that we'll be featuring at the show?
Well, we have about, I believe, 6 contests, and the main, of course, being best structure, and that's open to any scale. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't have to be railroad related to qualify, but it could be scratch built, kit bashed, or from a number of kits. Doesn't matter. And then the other category is best diorama.
Now I understand, not to interrupt you, although
sure.
I will interrupt you. I understand that George Selios is entering his whole layout.
Well, he's gonna have some tough competition.
I'm sorry, I threw you there. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Well, wait a minute. Don't you have a category where you have a little diorama on a peanut butter jar lid? Maybe a big diorama competition. Football field size, and
Or the minimum size has to be an acre.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just going to be a couple of square feet under.
Yeah, he's not going to make it.
Well,
you would have made it, Scott, if your layout was finished.
Yeah, I probably would. What I think I'll do now can the show coordinators enter the contests?
We're judging, so I don't think.
Oh, okay. So that would be bad then, because what I would do is I would enter a 1-to-1 scale model of a working railroad located directly behind the hotel where the convention is in, and I just leave it out there. I wouldn't try to bring it inside. I just have people go out and look at it there. So,
all joking aside, I have the only portable layout, as both Dave Frary and Scott can attest to. So I can actually bring my layout if need be.
and I'm sure Jimmy would also like to point out that the layout is for sale.
Oh, of course.
We're getting about so far off track here.
Okay. I think Doug was on.
Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, Doug's about to go to best photograph, I think.
Well, best diorama.
Okay.
Yeah, we're there past that. Then best photograph of a model, which is pretty obvious, and it could be digital or film-based. It doesn't matter. And the next one is best photograph of a prototype, which should be some kind of railroad-related structure that does exist or once existed. Then the next one is the square foot challenge, which is basically a diorama contest, but it's limited to a 12 by 12 inch area, but no height restrictions, so anything goes as far as how high you want to go.
So if someone builds a model of the Empire State Building in
well, I guess we should have a ceiling height. The ceiling height in the room is, I think, 14 feet.
It's got to fit in the room.
Yeah, I think that would be about 16 feet, so they'd just be shy.
Okay.
And the last contest, which is the famous peanut butter lid challenge, which is any kind of modeling that can be done within the realm of a approximately 4-inch diameter peanut butter lid jar, similar to the challenge they do on the forum.
Now, I know we talked a little bit about this, but this fascinates me. First of all, because just the sheer size or lack thereof, and the constraints that come about as a result of that. But I think I was telling you guys that one of my clients, a gentleman from Connecticut, is building a diorama, or it's actually a model railroad on a peanut butter lid for this convention. And he showed me the pieces. And first of all, it's in 1/860th scale, which in and of itself is amazing. He is a dental surgeon, and I'm sure he's got the tools and the optical equipment to be able to work this small. But he built an 060 locomotive. He's building a complete waterfront scene with a pier. Oh yeah, with a pier. And now I've seen pictures of this, and it's amazing. But the thing that kills me is the last correspondence I had with him. I asked him how he was doing with it, and he said fine. He had just sent it, I believe, to California, where someone was going to be installing a sound system in it.
Come on.
And my response to him was, if the thing runs, you win. So I can't even. But he's got a clipper ship in the harbor. He's got freight cars that he's built. I mean, this thing is amazing. And here I am laboring in HO scale. I may be missing the boat.
Now, could I ask a question of Doug?
Yeah.
Do I actually have to have a peanut butter jar lid, or can I do it on something else, say a piece of foam that's the same size?
Yeah. I don't know, Scott. What do you think? I never even thought of that. I guess it has to be on the lid.
Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
it's got to be a jar lid. Now,
Yeah,
does it
okay.
have to be a peanut butter jar lid? I would say no. I think that there's certainly room for interpretation in that whole peanut butter lid challenge thing. The key is that it has to be within the spirit of the contest, which is to build something on the lid of a jar, and it can't be any larger than, let's say, 4 1/4 inches in circumference or diameter.
And it can't overhang at all, right?
And it well, within reason. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about the rules and what really are the rules, and I've had some people email me regarding the rules, and the rules are more guidelines than rules. If someone is flagrant in their violation of the rules, then we'll probably have to step up and enforce them. But the whole goal to this thing is to just bring everybody's work together.
And to have fun.
Yeah, and I said it on the last podcast, this is not an NMRA competition where, there's going to be points deducted and, all this, crazy stuff. We want this to be a fun time. So
Now, could you build something inside the jar and screw the lid on the top?
you could. I would recommend emptying the peanut butter first, though.
Well, you won't be able to see in the jar if it still has
That's right.
Just a little peanut butter crust.
You know how hard it is to clean peanut butter out of one of those things?
Yeah, you have to use something called soap.
Oh, yeah. Well.
You guys can all enjoy yourselves with the peanut butter lid challenge. Since I am allergic to peanut butter, I'll have to stay out of the room.
You're the kid. You're that kid.
Yeah, I'm the kid.
You're the kid that wouldn't let me bring peanut butter sandwiches to school.
What else do people need to know about these competitions, Doug?
Just to have fun and don't worry about the rules, and bring your stuff.
We wanted to talk about it this month because we want people to realize that although the convention is in November, the clock is kind of ticking, and here it is May, and believe it or not, November will be here before we know it. So if you're planning on entering a contest and you have yet to start something, get going. And we're all anxious to see what everyone brings up. I've talked to many people who are either working on things to bring with them or already have finished items to bring with them. So I think it'll be fun to see what everybody brings to display.
It is fun. It is fun because it's so non-traditional. People are going to come with their best work, and that's going to be that's the part that I always like to see.
I got a phone call from a gentleman in Florida who is not a model railroader, but he's coming to the convention because he loves to build structures. And he was talking about the competitions and what he could enter and so on and so forth. So I had never even assimilated the idea that this might attract people outside the hobby. But evidently, at least with this gentleman, that's the case. Dave is going to be one of our clinicians, and Dave is fully and highly qualified to be presenting the clinic that he will be doing, which is on photographing model railroad structures. And Dave, would you mind talking a little bit about your clinic and what you're going to be talking about and what people can expect?
Well, the clinic will be kind of open-ended. I came up the old-fashioned way. I learned photography on view cameras, and of course those days are long gone. A few fashion photographers, but nobody uses a view camera anymore. So everybody nowadays has a digital camera. So the thrust of what I'm going to do is try and show you the best way to use your digital camera to capture some really nice-looking model railroad shots. And we'll talk a little bit about file formats and how to capture the images. But mainly the thrust of this will be about lighting. Lighting is 99% of what you need to know to really get nice pictures of your models or your model railroad. So I think that's what we'll do. And what I'm going to do is set up a demonstration with using 3 lights, the basic 3-light setup. I'll have a camera, and hopefully I'll be able to run a cord to my video projector through my computer so that folks can actually see what's happening on the screen while I move the lights around and we talk about it. And I encourage modelers who come to my clinic to, bring some questions. Ask a lot of questions about what's going on.
Okay. Dave, what are some of the differences that you've found between film photography and digital?
I love film. And it's only because I've been with film my whole life, and I know I could predict when I went to do a job. Like I think I've photographed bits and pieces of George Celios's layout, I think 8 times for Model Railroader magazine in one form or another, or Great Model Railroads or one of the magazines. And I love film because I knew that my job there at George's was to get the best angles. And the film and the processing and the lighting were almost automatic because I had done so much of it. Now with digital, I'm learning all over again. I'm learning just like the folks who have just purchased a digital camera. And the problem with digital for me is I tend to work too fast. Because the cameras are semi-automatic or fully automatic, depending on what you buy, I tend to speed up the process, and I don't look for the best angles, and I don't look for the best composition. I kind of point and shoot. So my process with digital has been to forcibly slow myself down and make me look for the best shot or the best angle. I like digital. Believe me, being able to get a picture and look at it 30 seconds later on the computer screen and then go in and make it lighter, darker, sharper, move stuff around in it. Wow, it's just mind-boggling. 10 years ago, that wasn't even thought of. 20 years ago, it would be science fiction. So,
in the old days, 10 years ago,
the digital photography, that was the old days.
Well, just at kind of the onset of digital photography, people are still shooting film. you'd have to use a Polaroid back to get any kind of instant feedback on what
Yep.
you were shooting, and that wasn't always the best way to do it because a Polaroid print certainly isn't the same quality as a 4x5 piece of sheet film.
Well,
You know,
when I used a view camera, say the first and second, third time I photographed George's layout, I used Ektachrome, 6118 Kodak Ektachrome, but I'd always use Type 52 Polaroid on the back just to look at my composition. After a while, you look at the ground glass on a view camera, the image is upside down. And after a while, it looks okay to you because your brain kind of compensates for the fact that it's upside down. But I would still pull a Polaroid just to really look at the image right side up, and look at the light and shadow and the composition. Unfortunately, fortunately, with digital photography now, you have that little teeny screen on the back of your camera, and you can do pretty much the same thing. So you get the feedback right away.
Now, there's a preponderance of digital cameras on the market now. Is there one or two that you would recommend to someone just starting out?
Well, the first digital camera I bought in 1999. It was a Kodak 950, I believe. I'm sorry, a Nikon 950. And I still use that camera today, and it takes decent pictures. I think the biggest file size is about 3 megapixels, I believe. I'm not sure about that. But I still use it, and if you've seen my scenery book, or if you bought the new version of my scenery book,
Free plug.
It's a free plug, but that's not what my comment is about the images in the book. They're all new images, and all but 7 of them are digital. And some were taken with this camera that's now 8 years old, and I defy you to tell which is the 12 megapixel image, which is film, and which is the 3 megapixel image. You just can't tell. And even the older cameras. Now today I use a Fuji FinePix S2. And what the S2 is, it's a Nikon N60 body that's been retrofitted for digital. The camera I have is about 5 years old, but it takes all my Nikon lenses. So I selected it because it had, at the time, a large file format, and it would take all the lenses, and I could plug in electronic flash to it and use my studio strobes in a studio situation, and use the camera like a film camera.
Needless to say, I think your clinic will be very well attended. And speaking of the Franklin in South Manchester, you've photographed that layout more extensively than anybody. One of the pieces that you failed to mention was the book that you photographed.
Yeah, George's book that's still for sale has 82 of my pictures in it. They were all shot 35 millimeter film at the time, and it was fun for me to do it. The lighting setups were simple, and speaking from a photographer's point of view, all I did was move the camera around the layout and record it. I didn't look for fancy images. I didn't look for special shots or anything. I just tried to capture the layout because that's what George wanted. And it was a work for hire situation. I went in and shot the railroad and gave him the film, and then he in turn gave it to the book publisher to put his book together.
And just to tie that in, you mentioned the book is still for sale, and folks, if you're looking for a book, you can get it at craftsmankits.com. Jimmy has several of them in stock, and I will tell you that the book is timeless, partly because the layout is so well done, but mostly because the photography is so well done. I would hold that photography, the quality of that photography, up to anything that I've ever seen in this hobby. And I know now, Dave, I'm talking about you like you're not in the room, but no, you really did a great job. And I don't know anybody who's serious about structures or a fan of the Franklin in South Manchester that doesn't own the book and hasn't dog-eared the thing.
Yeah.
And most of us own a couple of them because you misplace it, and all of a sudden you go looking for the thing and you go nuts. And so for I think, was it $17.95, Jimmy, through you?
That's correct.
it's a great opportunity to get some fantastic pictures of a wonderful layout. And I'll also say that later on in this program, we've got an interview with George Selios, and one of the things that he's going to talk about is some of the changes that are being made in the original portions of the Franklin and South Manchester. And this is an opportunity to kind of have some photos of the way it was.
Well, the book does represent a little bit of history, because a lot of the spectacular city scenes are being changed as we speak right now.
Now, just to tie back into the show for a second before we move on, last month we had a little bit of an issue with some people who had called the hotel, the Holiday Inn in Mansfield, Massachusetts, and attempted to make reservations, and were told that all the rooms for the show were gone. I have since talked to the function manager, and she has freed up another block of rooms. So if you haven't made your reservations, you want to start thinking about doing that. The great thing is you can make your reservations now, then work on your travel plans, and if, heaven forbid, you can't make the show for whatever reasons, you can always cancel your reservations. But I don't want to see anyone not get the show rate on the room if they can help it. So anything else we need to discuss about the show at this point, guys?
Well, I think that's it.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Listen up, Craftsman Structure fans. Not all Craftsman Structure kits are created equal. If you're looking for a kit to fit that hard-to-find spot on your layout, or you don't have room for one of the super kits, but you want the detail of a Craftsman kit, look no further than our friends at Foss Scale Limited. Foss has you covered, folks. Got a big space to fill? How about Foss's new limited edition kit, Department of Docks? Create your own waterfront scene or adapt it to fit an inland industrial scene. Either way, you'll have a great-looking structure. Check out all the Foss Scale Limited kits at www.fosslimited.com. Foss Scale Limited also manufactures a line of quick kits to fit smaller spaces. These kits are perfect for modelers who are new to building Craftsman Structure kits. They're loaded with all the detail you've come to expect from Foss, and they'll fit in the palm of your hand. They're great if you're looking for a project that won't tie you up. All Foss Scale Limited kits can be ordered through the internet. Check out the Foss website at www.fosslimited.com and place your order today. Folks, if you've ever looked at a beautifully scenic model railroad and thought there was no way you could do that kind of work, then listen up, because I have the answer to your problems. Dave Frary, the best-selling author in the history of model railroading, has just made his incredible book, How to Build Realistic Model Railroad Scenery, even better. This all-new third edition contains 144 pages of brand-new tips, tricks, and techniques you need to know to build great-looking model railroad scenery. This isn't just a rewrite of the original book, folks. Dave shows you how easy it really is and backs up his 50 years of experience with hundreds of color photos taken by Dave himself. After you read this book, you'll have the knowledge you need to know to build your own great-looking model railroad scenery. To purchase your very own copy of Building Realistic Model Railroad Scenery, the third edition, log on to www.mrscenery.com and order right online. Mention that you heard about it here, and Dave will even autograph your copy. While you're there, check out all the other great books, DVDs, and scenery supplies any model railroader could need. Once again, the website you need to know is www.mrscenery.com.
Now, back to the Scotty Mason Show.
Okay. We have some reviews this month. The first review that I want to talk about is an O-scale structure by a company called Cedar Hill Designs. The structure is called Jeb's Place. And just to preface my comments, Jeb's Place is part of a project that I'm working on for an upcoming DVD, and it will also be entered into the National Narrow Gauge Convention structure and diorama competition at the end of August up in Portland, Maine this year. And I had seen this kit probably a year or so ago and really loved the design, and was pretty much looking for an excuse to build the thing. I'm not in O-scale, but I've seen some wonderful work by guys like Brian Nolan and Dave Ravella. So I really wanted to give it a shot, and came up with the idea for this DVD as an excuse to go out and buy the kit, basically. And I have to say that, unfortunately, I was a little disappointed with what was in the box. The design of the structure is wonderful. It's really a neat-looking kit. Unfortunately, I think by today's standards, most structure builders expect a little more than the quality that comes in the box. And what I mean by that is that along with the pile of sticks that you would expect in any Craftsman structure kit, instead of laser cut sides, which has really kind of become the standard for wood buildings nowadays, the kit comes with a pile of sheets of clapboard siding, which you have to not only cut to size, but you have to cut the window openings for. The problem isn't so much the fact that you've got to cut the window openings. The problem is that when you lay up these sheets of clapboard siding one on top of the other, you're going to have seams. And for anybody who's ever done this before, almost always the ends of those pieces of siding tend to curl up. So in my case, where this is going to be entered for competition, that's not a risk that I can take. So I was pretty disappointed that that was the case. The other bone of contention, if you will, was that I thought that the resin castings were a little crude. I thought they could have been a little sharper in detail, and it would have been nicer if there were a little more of them. What this company has done is, beyond their own resin detail castings, they've also included a number of metal castings from Berkshire Valley, which is a nice touch. And those go a long way to helping, if you will, make up some of the drawbacks of the resin castings. But this kit's going to take a little bit of work before I can get it to the point where I feel it's ready for competition. So I recommend the kit from the standpoint of its design, but be aware of what you're going to get when you open that box. Another structure I wanted to talk about is from a company called Bollinger Edgerly Scale Trains, and say that 5 times fast. And it's a little wooden kit of a rundown, derelict market called Congress Mercado, and it's based on a prototype in Arizona. And it's a little ramshackle, kind of sprawling kit that, if it's the perfect kind of kit if you've never built a Craftsman structure kit. Good place to start. Pretty easy to build. The instructions are straightforward. The price point is good, and in the end, you're going to learn some techniques and learn how to put these things together, and you're going to have a nice little kit. A lot of times, those of us who are fans of Craftsman structures, and there's 4 of us here, tend to focus on the super kits, what George Selios is putting out, or what's coming out from South River Model Works, or what Doug's new limited edition kit is going to be, or what Bar Mills is doing, and we fail to really focus on some of these smaller kits. Well, unless you're building a model railroad for the Square Acre Challenge, you run out of room pretty quick for some of these big kits. So structures like Congress Mercado, or some of the smaller Bar Mills kits, or many of the smaller kits that you can get through Foscale, are perfect examples of good quality Craftsman structures that will fit in anywhere and really fill in the blanks. And I was very impressed with the fit and finish of this structure. I thought the instructions were very well done, and not a whole lot of people maybe have heard of Bollinger Edgerly Scale Trains. Brian Bollinger has been producing Craftsman structures for 3 or 4 years now, so he's kind of a new guy on the block, but he does nice work, and he's a nice guy besides. So if you're looking for something small to fit a smaller space, you might want to take a look at this particular kit. It's based on a Western prototype, but I think it would fit with maybe a little modification anywhere in the country. And then the last kit I want to talk about is another structure that I'm working on in conjunction with this DVD. It's an O-scale kit from Sierra West. It's the mill engine and boiler house. And I know you guys are pretty familiar with Sierra West and Brett Gallant and the quality of work that they do. And this particular kit is no exception to that. This is his first O-scale kit, and just absolutely wonderful. It's almost scratch building. It's board by board construction. His instruction book is fantastic, and it's really a true craftsman's approach to structure building. A lot of, I guess, testimony to the quality of his work is that a lot of people who enter structure contests, and especially this narrow gauge competition, do so with his structures. So I've been having a great time building it, and I guess what's equally fun for me is that I'm building something for myself, which I don't often get a chance to do. And I know Dave and Doug can attest to the fact that, there's people who make a living out of this hobby. There sometimes isn't a whole lot of time to build things for yourself.
How far along are you, Scott?
I've got well. Here's the funny part about it. Now, and I'll answer your question, I promise. When I build for clients, my goal is to do the best quality work I can in the fastest amount of time, because time is money to my clients. So a structure that may take someone 100 hours to build, I can usually build it in 50 or 60 hours. Now, however, this kit doesn't really allow you to work like that, partly because it's board-by-board construction, and partly because it is for competition, and there's a level of detail that I'm trying to add to this. So to answer your question, I have 2 walls done. Now, these 2 walls, one is a side wall. It's about 5 inches long and about 4 inches high, and it took me about 8 hours to build it. And the other is an end wall, and it took me probably 5 hours to build, but each board has to be weathered and distressed. Nail holes and knot holes and all that stuff has to be added in. So it's a very finicky, picky process that's time consuming. But I think a lot of people would look at it as, they don't have the patience for that kind of work. I look at it as it's just total relaxation. Mm-hmm. So I'm having
now,
good...
Are you pre-painting the boards?
Well, I'm using a technique. The thing that people will find out when they see the DVD is that Brian Nolan, who has won the last 4 National Narrow Gauge Convention structure and diorama competitions, is really holding my hand through this process, and I'm using a lot of the techniques that Brian uses. And one of the techniques is that he pre-stains the wood with a very noxious mixture of diasol, flocal roof brown, flocal grime, and flocal earth. And what he does is he paints on the stain and then wipes it off with a rag. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, he uses a welder's brush, which you can get at Home Depot, and brushes in distress and wood grain. Mm-hmm. And then he'll use like a fine-tooth razor saw, an X-Acto knife, all sorts of things to really beat up the wood a little. So a lot of the painting and distressing is done before the actual gluing process.
Oh, nice! Can't wait to see it.
So I'm looking forward to continuing to work on it. I know Doug's got this month's tips and techniques for us. So Doug, take it away.
I just wanted to talk about some quick and easy way to add waterfront. One of the things we found when we released our Department of Docks kit was that most guys would say that they didn't have any waterfront on their layout because they're finished with their layout or there's just no room. But you don't need that much to convey a sense of the waterfront, and you, believe it or not, you already have some of it done by the fact that your fascia board on your layout, which is the edge, be it 1x2 or 1x4 or however you finished it off, can be the seawall of your waterfront, whether it's just by slapping a stone wall casting on it or spackling it and painting it just a concrete color. And then all you would need to do is to add a horizontal surface for water, and if you have a 36-inch aisle or a 2-foot aisle even, you only need to add 2 to 4 inches of water surface just to get that final finish to your layout. And it's also good because if you are photographing it, now your fascia board is an extension of the layout by a couple more inches, so you have that extra depth to add to it. So you would just take a 1x4. You could take gator board, anything that's rigid and is not going to warp, and screw it to the underside of the bottom edge of your layout, and almost like an L girder without the L. So it's just a flat. It's not even an L girder. It's a flat girder. So after that, you would just paint it, and apply whatever technique you would use for water, whether it's pouring resin or just painting varnish on it. and you could easily have some waterfront. And you could do this for the entire length of your layout, or just 24 inches or 12 inches or whatever you need, and still not take up any substantial real estate.
Doug, you just getting back to Department of Docks for a minute, you mentioned spackling over wood, and pretty much that's the technique you used for the seawall on that diorama, is that correct?
Yeah, it's just joint compound, and then for timbers, because it would never just be pure concrete. It would have to be some kind of supports, especially if ships are going to be banging into it. I just added 3/16-inch square wood to it, and then just every maybe 15 to 20 feet put a vertical timber member, and on top of that just one big horizontal member to which you could add cleats or bollards, or if you want ships to tie up to it and stuff.
Now you've got a pretty convincing water scene on your layout. What were the techniques and materials you used for that?
Fast and easy. Basically paint the surface black to bluish color, and a coat of polyacrylic clear varnish, and on top of that I just add some clear silicone caulk with a brush to dab on some waves and some texture so it's not too flat, especially up against rocks and objects that are sticking out of the water.
Dave and I have had an opportunity to work together on a number of projects in the last couple of years, and I've seen Dave use a lot of different techniques to create water. Dave, is there a favorite that you have, or is it a question of kind of letting the circumstances dictate what method you use?
Yeah, it depends on the project. I have two favorite materials. One is Envirotex, which is a two-part epoxy, and you mix the two parts together and you pour it onto a water surface. And what it does, it creates a clear, hard epoxy finish that's absolutely level. So if you want wave action and stuff, you have to go in afterwards and add it over the Envirotex. I know George Celios has had really good luck by hanging around for 10 or 12 hours while the Envirotex cures, and then at the magic moment taking a screwdriver and making ripples on the water surface. That works for him. And just as the stuff is starting to kick, because it's an epoxy and it's a two-part mixture, so you have a resin and a catalyst, and just as they start to form the long-chain polymers to create the hard water surface, if you